The biggest surprises of 2023, trade deadline teams, undervalued players, waiver wire, injuries, and more. That's all coming up with former Major League player Cody Decker next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Oh, fantastic. I apologize to all of you guys for last week. We canceled the show. We had a rain out after the smoke out the other day, and we had to make up two softball games against the two best teams, and we crushed them both, 11-0 and 6-3. We ended up as the number 2 seed in the playoffs. I pitched 2 gems back-to-back doubleheader, 12 innings in total. So sorry about that, but we're back today. What's going on with you, Ruvain?
Yeah, my son graduated 8th grade, starting high school next year. That's why I couldn't make it. So, yes, it's both of us. We both had good things going on, and only good things.
Yeah, sounds good. I also have an 8th grader, and his graduation was yesterday, same time as the wild card playoffs, but we got the first round bye, so all's good. I didn't have to miss anything, or put it this way, I didn't have to have any conflict. My wife would have killed me. Anyways, we got a great show today. You might know him from FS1. You might know him from the show Off Base on MLB Network, or maybe you know him from playing in the Major League Baseball. Cody Decker, welcome to the show. How are you, Cody?
No. Welcome to the show, you have invited me on. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much. I am very jazzed to be here. And if anyone knows who I am, get a life.
Awesome. And by the way, I wanted to say it was so much fun hanging out with you during Tout Wars week back in March. And I know you also analyzed my labor draft. So nice to hang out with you and chat about it. And we talked a lot about Christian Walker, who
we did.
Yeah, who you said would hit 40 home runs this year. It's close to that. What do you think about him?
He's off to a great start. He's got 15 right now. What he has really been has been an RBI machine. He's sitting on 49. The OPS of 844, not to mention the guy has been like a career like 2 to 230 hitter, 240 hitter, and this year 271, man. He's off to a great start. I couldn't be prouder of this guy. He is an off-the-charts great guy off the field, not to mention on the field, just talent. I feel like he's been pigeonholed as a first baseman, which is strange. He's not a big guy, right guy, about 6 foot tall, maybe 5'11", big power. But the fact that he's been pigeonholed at first base because he's an athletic enough guy that I think he could actually be versatile enough, hit up third base, hit up the outfield. But man, I love what he's doing, and I'm also very thrilled to be right.
Yeah. And he stole a base today, too. He's got a little hint of speed. His batting average, 271, highest of his career. What really speaks to me, though, is his strikeout rate down to 17%. That's a contact hitter. Last year was 20%. This is the best of his career. So it's not just the power. It's the average. It's everything going. He looks great on the Raswell Player Rater. He is just about equivalent to Fernando Tatis and Jose Ramirez this year.
And he's in a great lineup. That plays into it. He's got a couple speedsters in that lineup, and that's the whole reason why he's not even playing in the outfield. He's not playing in the outfield because they got so many outfielders to play there. They got those rabbits there. I saw the other day, Corbin Carroll scored from first on a single, which is just amazing to think about. Insane. So if you have those guys ahead of you and you're getting the chance to bat them in, that's a great position for him.
On top of that, man, like I don't know if you remember me talking about this, but I was talking up the Diamondbacks big time with preseason. I really think they were a playoff team from the get-go, and a lot of people weren't paying attention to them basically because the Los Angeles Dodgers are there, and the San Diego Padres were making such gigantic splashes that you could not ignore them, because on paper the Diamondbacks should not be a playoff team compared to the Dodgers or the San Diego Padres. And look at what the Giants are doing right now as well. But yeah, the Arizona Diamondbacks were a team that was poised and ready to make a playoff run. Ketel Marte coming into what he is. Not to mention just the other young talent, even Pavin Smith, a guy that of all the players and young prospects on this team, he was a guy probably I expected the least amount from, and he has been doing a phenomenal job making the transition to the outfield as well. So Dude, this is a team that I do also think is one pitcher away from really making a deep run. But can you imagine if this team got their hands on like a Corbin Burns at the trade deadline? They'll be deadly.
Yeah, speaking of trade deadline, what do you think is going to happen this time around? You think it's going to be a very active one? You think it's going to be a passive one? The last couple of seasons have been just absolutely jacked. What do you think about that?
I got to assume it's going to be the opposite. I got to think it's going to be a little passive, and I hope I'm wrong because these last 2 seasons have been killer. It's going through the leagues and the divisions and deciding who are the buyers and sellers. We know that the A's are sellers, but quite frankly, do they have a single piece that anyone's really going to want all that much that's going to demand a high price? The answer is a staggering no. You look at the Royals. Yeah, you can maybe get something for Chapman, but that's mainly because everybody's bullpens are shot to complete hell. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers go after him, if the Yankees go after him, bring him back, although we've already seen the experiment of Chapman in the Bronx. I can't imagine them wanting to have that relocation happen. And then you look at other teams like the White Sox. Yeah, I want to sit here and say, yeah, the White Sox are absolute sellers. They are 5 games out of first place in the worst division in Major League Baseball. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they can make a little run for it. And at the end of the day, we saw last year with the Phillies going all the way to the World Series, a team that absolutely backed into the playoffs last second and were buyers under 500 at the trade deadline. It's really not out of the realm of reality that a lot of these sellers turn into buyers because why not?
Yeah, the White Sox, ordinarily, I'd say, if they're going to sell, they'll sell on a guy like Liam Hendricks, a closer.
Yes.
But they're not doing that this year, right?
I can't imagine. And like that's not the only name. Like Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly immediately comes to mind as a guy that can help a team right now. The Dodgers, honest to God, I feel like the Dodgers and the Angels are 2 teams that have the exact same needs. The Dodgers need bullpen help. Their bullpen has been the absolute atrocious thing that's been taking place. The Angels could always use bullpen help and starting rotation help, not to mention that both teams need infield depth. So I suggested Tim Anderson about the Angels. The Dodgers could use Tim Anderson. I know he's having a really rough year, but, man, some off-the-field stuff, everything that's been going on with him, a lot of injuries. I feel like if he just got a change of scenery, and I know that's such an old cliche, change of scenery doesn't really matter. It does. I played in this game for 11 years, and I got some changes of scenery that were very, very helpful. I think he needs to get out of the South Side, man. I really do. You get him to a team like the Dodgers, he can help that team win. You get him to the Angels, he can help that team win. That Angels team currently has Anthony Rendon on the IL. They got Zach Nato on the IL. They got Urshela gone for the year. They need infield depth pretty badly, which is why they actually went out and sired Ryan Murphy last week, a name we did never thought we'd hear from again.
Yeah. Ruvain, who do you think is a surprise buyer for you? The Orioles, to me, are a team that they have the elements to win. I don't see the Orioles making a huge splash at the deadline, but I can see them approaching the deadline quicker than most and going for these medium pieces. I also like the Marlins. I think we've seen the Marlins make a lot of trades and a lot of splashes, surprisingly even in the past at the deadline. And they've got a great core. Arias, can he hit 400? Who knows? Alcantara, he's got to be better than this. What do you think, Ruvain? Who's your teams that you think are going to be in it for the buying?
Well, to buy, obviously the Padres are going to go in. They're 100%. They're always all in, it seems like. The Blue Jays are going to be buyers, but the surprise buyers, I think, are going to be the Reds. That Central Division is so weak that they have a chance of actually getting into the playoffs and winning the division. And once they're in the playoffs, anything can happen, as we saw last year. So initially, we all thought that Alexis Diaz, the closer for the Reds, was going to be the top guy on the trade list to get traded for, and he's now not going to be available for anybody. So it's very interesting. But what I think though is 2 surprise sellers. Well, the Cubs, I think, are going to sell. I wouldn't be surprised if they sell Marcus Stroman because this is the height of his value. They can probably get the most for him right now. But don't be surprised if the Mets are sellers. The Mets may want to dump some salary because they may want to take on salary next year.
I hope not.
Well, that's being a Met fan, I hope not too, but the way things are trending, they don't look like they're turning anything around anytime soon.
In terms of the season so far, what do you think has been the biggest surprise in the MLB so far for you?
Texas Rangers. I did not expect this team to be competing this quickly. I did not expect them to hold the West the way they are. And I sure as hell, when they started this run, I was expecting it I was expecting it to be the bubble that was going to burst, and it never did. At one point, you got to acknowledge that this team is actually real, and they are real. Their bullpen is pitching well. Their starting staff is doing a hell of a job, and they are just scoring runs at a borderline infinite rate right now. I think it's a bit of a surprise the Minnesota Twins are exactly where they were last year. I thought this team got better in the offseason by getting their hands on a Pablo Lopez. I thought it was almost madness that the Miami Marlins allowed Pablo Lopez to go. But look, they got Luis Ariz hitting 400 right now. They're looking like they absolutely dominated this deal. I think the Marlins are a surprise. I'm actually surprised on the flip side that the Mariners are not playing well yet. This is a team that was a playoff team last year, should be a playoff team this year. And as of right now, we're currently sitting 4th in the AL West, and they should not be in that spot. But there is a caveat on that team, and it's the fact that this team has been very poor the first half of the season, 3 straight years. In these last 2 years, obviously last year the playoff run, but the year before that, they almost got within a half game of the playoff run. They've had big second halves, and quite frankly, I'm waiting for this team to be a full season team. This should be a 105-win ball club with the actual squad they're putting out there, obviously losing Robbie Ray Hurts, but this team needs to get their act together, and they need to get their act together fast.
Yeah, I can see them trading away Suarez and being sellers. I definitely think they were definitely a surprise bad. As far as Texas goes, I think it's incredible that you lose Jacob deGrom pretty much for the year, and their staff has been this good. Nate Eovaldi has been one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball. John Gray has been great. Martin Perez still doing what he's been doing last year, and Andrew Heaney finally healthy, doing great. Dane Dunning is turning his career season unbelievable. And I love the Twins. The Twins, I love their pitching staff. I love the way they treat pitchers. Pablo Lopez, you mentioned already. Bailey Ober has been great. Joe Ryan, he pitched 9 complete shutout innings today. Unbelievable. They've got a great staff. Yeah, that's one of those trades, I think, with Arias that worked out for both teams. As far as surprises, Corbin Carroll, to me, heading into the season, you always take a look at these flashy prospects, and some of them pan out, some of them don't. As a projections guy myself, I never bet on the prospect. I mean, for every prospect that makes it, 3 of them go bust. But he's absolutely stellar this year. $43 player in a 15-team mixed roto league. Number 3 on the player radar. We all knew he was good, but he has just taken it to the next level. And I was talking before the show with Ruvain, and Ruvain's bold prediction this year was that somebody's going to go 40-40.
Two players. Two players. Yeah,
Corbin Carroll right there with it.
Not only that, I mean, guys, I kind of thought it was going to be I didn't think it was going to be this good, but the Arizona Diamondbacks are not an organization that is used to spending money. They sure as hell don't extend rookies to $100 million contracts unless they know they got themselves a blue chipper. And the moment that happened, that was the moment I said the Diamondbacks are going to the playoffs this year because they're not paying this kid if they don't think he is the truth.
And off of the Arias thing that we were mentioning before, the one thing that surprised me the most was that there are only 9 hitters in baseball that are batting over 300. We thought with the shift gone that the batting averages would go up, but it's gone up overall in general. But there are only 9 players batting over 300, which is, I think, a big surprise to most anyone because people thought, oh yeah, no shift. It's an advantage to the hitters. Lefty hitters will hit for a higher average. It really hasn't really panned out that much.
And Madison Bumgarner, and you're still paying for him, and they're still doing this great. So incredible run by the Diamondbacks. Let's talk undervalued players for the rest of the season. Cody, what are your thoughts on somebody who, might be a little bit better than the market or most people think?
There's a guy that we all kind of undervalued going in. I thought it was Max Muncy. I know he's hurt right now with the hamstring issue, but I truly think that when he comes back, he's going to continue the exact streak he was on because that guy, it's not even a talent issue. It's like he needs just motivation. You give him some motivation, he's going to go absolutely crazy. Not to mention that, Cody Bellinger. I do think this guy's turned something around a little bit. He just got off the IL and has actually struggled since coming off the IL. If the Cubs end up being sellers, he's a name that I expect to be coming around. But, yeah, he's a guy that's absolutely outperformed what we've seen these last couple of years.
Ruvain, how about you?
I got two, and there happen to be both Phillies. Alec Boehm, he's last year he hit for a higher average and hit for more power in the second half of the season, so I expect the same thing from him. And Kyle Schwarber, you can't have that bad of an average. Last year he batted around 204 for the first half of the season. Second half of the season he batted 230, but had a higher home run rate, had a higher walk rate, and all this together, I think both of them together will both flourish in the second half, just because the Phillies seem like a second half team to me.
I think Ryan McMahon, who's come on really strong in the past month, he's got 8 homers and 23 RBIs, fourth in WAR over the last 30 days. Rockies score a lot of runs. They play in quite a good ballpark, especially for fantasy basis. Ryan McMahon, I think, is an undervalued player. We were on him before the season. And how about Josh Naylor? 9 homers, 5 stolen bases, almost a 300 batting average with 55 RBIs. Who saw that coming? But I think he is undervalued. I don't think the market has caught up to him. He's the better corner infielder in Cleveland, better than Josh Bell, in my opinion. So a little bit about you, Cody. Want to do a little personal about you. And, we had on the show earlier this year Matt Mervis, first baseman for the Cubs, and he played on Team Israel this year. Wanted to get your thoughts on your experience playing on Team Israel over your career.
Great experience. I got to meet a great group of guys. I got to, it was always a dream of mine to play in Japan. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I always dreamed that at one point I'd play for the Yomiuri Giants or Chinichi Dragons. My favorite baseball movie outside of The Natural is unquestionably Tom Selleck's classic Mr. Baseball, where he played Tom, I believe his character's name was Jack Elliott. Yes, it was Jack Elliott. He played for the Chunichi Dragons after coming off the Yankees. And as that player, Jack Elliott, who did lead the New York Yankees the year before in the month of August in 8th-inning doubles, I think that playing in Japan was just like this magical experience, especially playing in the Tokyo Dome against Japan. I've never seen anything like it. So that of all my Team Israel things, playing in Japan, that really takes the cake.
Yeah. By the way, what are your top 3 or 4 baseball movies of all time?
Number 1, The Natural. Number 2, Mr. Baseball. Number 3, Bull Durham. You could throw a Major League and a League of Their Own in the mix. Outside of that, it's pretty much a crapshoot of absolute horridness. If anyone says Field of Dreams, feel free to throw that person into a fire. That is a terrible movie, and anyone that says otherwise, honestly, it does not belong in my universe.
That's so funny. I feel the same way. I'm not a Field of Dreams guy. I did not like it at all. I kind of like, I don't know why, kid movie Angels in the Outfield. I just thought that was well done.
As a child, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But, growing up later in life, I'm like, Christopher Lloyd could have done more. Christopher Lloyd is in every great movie of all time. Christopher Lloyd doesn't miss. Christopher Lloyd phoned that one in.
Yeah.
Well, what about Naked Gun 33 1/3? I think that was a good baseball movie if you count Reggie
Number
Jackson
one.
trying to kill.
The first one. Yeah, the Angels, big game against the Mariners, baby. Absolutely. You got to love that. That is a baseball movie. I will not hear otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. That one scene is probably the greatest. Enrico Palazzo, greatest scene.
It's Enrico Palazzo!
Unbelievable. So tell me, Cody, you've played for a number of organizations around Major League Baseball, and, you talked about change of scenery. Did you see a very different philosophy among the different teams? Like, going from team to team, did they really strike you as doing different things for the good and worse? Don't give away any secrets here, but,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Completely. I'll give you an example. Leaving the San Diego Padres at the time was a bit of a mess, and I know they got their act together after I left, but I was there the first year, the Preller year, and there was a lot of turnover, so there wasn't really a direction for the organization at that point. I went over to the Royals, and the Royals kind of had this very old school mentality, but it was also very unique to see at the time. This was a team that just won the World Series, and the big league side and the minor league side were so disconnected that it was almost strange to see. I go over to the Rockies. They were a complete mess. And then I go over to the not the New York Mets. I go to the Boston Red Sox, and I'm like, oh, my goodness. There's a reason this team has been the Boston Red Sox for as long as they have. Organization through the roof. Metrics. Everything you need, they had. I go over to the Brewers. It was a skeleton factory over there. I then went to the Mets. They had nothing and then some. Wonderful people, but truly they were a mess of an organization at the time. I go over the Arizona Diamondbacks, which was all the Red Sox guys moved over to the Diamondbacks. And my goodness, There's a reason why the Arizona Diamondbacks are doing exactly what they're doing right now. Change in philosophy, communication with players, understanding of what the actual team accomplishments are going to be, understanding what roles need to be going forward, understanding that it's going to take a little bit of sacrifice, not to mention adjustment on what the things you need to do, willingness to adjust and accept new philosophies while still maintaining the old ones. An organization that has the coaching staff in lockstep with the front office staff in knowing exactly how we're going to implement these said metrics, implement said new techniques. There is a reason the Arizona Diamondbacks are exactly where they are right now. There's a reason why the Milwaukee Brewers stand pat every year at being the disappointment they are every year. There's a reason why the Rockies are in last place every single year.
Yeah, and that just perpetuates and until they change, until they decide to change the philosophy, import talent from other sceneries, import people who know what they're doing and have a different philosophy. I know the Mets have changed.
They have. Again, I was like 2 regimes ago. A different ownership group, different front office, everything. But again, the front office and guys I was with were phenomenal. Great people, great coaching staffs and everything. But as far as the direction of the organization and as far as organization went at the time, a bit of a disaster. Now, that was 2017. It's a different world now.
Right, absolutely. All right, before we go any further, it's time for the Injury Guru's Trivia of the Week.
So, Cody, this trivia is specifically geared toward you. This is a test of trivia and of your memory. You were in the minors for almost 10 years, and this is from 2010, your first year in Double-A with the Padres. There were 2 players on the roster with you that are still in the majors right now. Who are they?
Still in the majors from the 2010 team?
Yeah, your first year in Double-A with the Padres.
Okay, so I was drafted from 2010, San Antonio. Let's see now. Going through that team, we were minor league team of the year that year, I believe. We were actually minor league team of the year 3 out of 4 years during my time in those early years. Won a championship in San Antonio and in Fort Wayne. I'm trying to think on that team, though. 2012 was Miles Michaelis. He was not on the 2010 team.
Yes, he was.
He was not. He was on the 2012 team. I remember it very well. He was my roommate.
According to Baseball Reference, he was on the 2010 and 2011 team also. He was on the roster. That's what it said there.
So we won the championship. So here's how it went. 2009, I got drafted. I was in Low A, Fort Wayne, after I was in the AZL. 2010, I was actually in High A, California League, and I spent the entire year at Lake Elsinore. 2012 was the year 2011 was my first year there. Won a title. That was the year we had Miles Michaelis, who joined us that year. The other one that joined us halfway through was Jed Jerko. He went to the big leagues, but he's not the other guy.
Correct.
2011.
It's not Nick Hundley because he was on that roster also.
He was, but he was a big leaguer at the time. He came down and rehabbed. I'm going to say it was... Is Brad Brock still in the big leagues?
No, he's not. But you're on the right track. It is a reliever.
So it's got to be a relief pitcher. Who could it have been? Is there a lefty that we had maybe? I'm not going to lie to you. I have no idea. Who was on that
clue.
2011 team? Who was it?
Anthony Bass.
Oh, he just got sent down. Nice try. I win.
Well, he's still in the majors. He wasn't sent down. He was actually released. That's why, But they're actually, and there are 2 players on that roster who are still in the minor league systems. Robbie Erlin on the Dodgers. He's on the Dodger system, and Joe Whelan is in the Oakland system right now.
I did know Joe. I did not know Robbie was still playing. It's funny, that year, those were also 2 players that got traded over to us mid-season from Texas. And what's funny about that is Joe Whelan, and we won like 106 games that season. But I'll never forget it. Joe Whelan got traded to us, and it was such a cheat because one of the very few games we lost, we got no hit by Joe Whelan.
Interesting. Well, what advice would you give players coming up to the majors today?
Take it day by day. Understand what role they're gonna put you into. Make sure you have communication on what your role is and what your job is. When I got called up, I was told I was gonna play. I didn't play. I then started pinch hitting. I'd never pinch hit a day in my life, and now I'm pinch hitting against closers, and now I have 5 pinch hit at bats, and that's my entire career at that point. And it's tricky. So make sure you know what you're going into. Make sure you're able to adjust and make sure you understand what you're adjusting to. At no point was I told I was pinch hitting. I was literally told I was coming up to play. I got one start in the big leagues. Unfortunately, I never got another opportunity at the major league level. I spent the rest of my career stuck in AAA. I got to break a lot of AAA records. It's not something I got into baseball to do. So you got to make sure you're ready to adjust, make sure you're willing to make any adjustment put in front of you, and understand what those adjustments are for.
What player or coach most affected you throughout your playing career?
John Gibbons. John Gibbons was my AA manager in 2012. Having a man of his ilk believe in me was something that was insurmountable to my career in life. Pat Murphy also comes to mind. I loved Pat Murphy. He was very good to me. I don't trust Pat Murphy, but I love him. But John Gibbons was unquestionably my favorite manager. It's not even, honestly, it's not even a close second.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cody, for coming on the show. We'll be right back with Waiver Wire Pitcher Preview and the Injury Report with Ruvain. All right, we're back. Great segment by Cody Decker. And good luck, Ruvain, trying to convince him that Miles Michaelis was on his team.
I mean, I looked it up on Baseball Reference. I mean, is Baseball Reference wrong? I mean, I may have looked at the wrong year, but I mean, I did see Michaelis. I saw Cody Decker's name. I saw Anthony Bass's name. You know, I have been wrong before. I mean, wrong before.
I mean, he was his roommate, so good luck with that one.
All right. So I yeah, sure. Okay.
All right. No, good stuff. Great perspective. Let's continue here with our waiver wire picks. Ruvain, who's the waiver wire guy that you're looking at this week for your fantasy teams?
I actually got 3 of them. The first one, I think we have mentioned him before. It's Yanier Diaz, the catcher from Houston. He's been playing catcher and DH with Yordan Alvarez out. He's batting .277 on the year with 7 homers and 15 RBIs, but 3 of those homers, 6 of those RBIs, and a .333 average has been in the last week. He's only owned in 16% of CBS leagues, and if you have a 2-catcher league, you should definitely grab him because he has eligibility there. Another guy I want to mention is Ryan O'Hearn of Baltimore. He's been hitting with Mountcastle out. Mountcastle is supposed to come back over the weekend. It is possible he'll come back because he's on a rehab assignment. So Baltimore has a quandary because O'Hearn has been hitting. He's batting .341 on the year with 6 homers and 20 RBIs. He's only 11% owned in CBS, so if you need a corner infielder for the weekend or maybe even beyond because he will get some playing time, he's a guy to look for. And another guy who's a little bit under the radar just because he plays for the Nationals, that's Luis Garcia. He's only owned in 30% of CBS leagues. Now, his numbers don't jump out at you, but he's very consistent. He's batting .283. He's got 5 homers and 3 stolen bases. He's eligible at shortstop and second, and he's a great filling guy to have. You don't have to worry about him destroying your average. He will give you the occasional home run and stolen base, like I mentioned. So he's a guy, if you need a fill-in in the middle infield, he's a guy you could plug in.
Yeah, Mountcastle had been ice cold before he went on the IL. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what they're actually going to do afterwards. We'll see. You took Yanier Diaz. He was on my list. I think that's a great call. 4 homers in the last 12 days. 277, 7 homers on the year in just 37 games. Absolutely, especially if you're in a 2-catcher league. Excellent pick. I'll throw out Tommy Pham. We have mentioned him before. He's got 7 homers, 8 stolen bases, batting .260 on the year. That's about a 15 to 20 homer and stolen base pace. Could stick with the Mets as a DH even more. I can see him getting more playing time as he's doing well. But I want to mention 2 relief pitchers out there. Jordan Hicks, 40% owned. He saved 3 games in a row this week on consecutive nights. That tells you something when they're bringing him in the 9th. 3 consecutive games. Helsley a little bit on the mend. Gallegos, he's perfectly capable, but instead they went to Hicks. So he becomes very, very, very interesting. I don't know, Ruvain, in terms of sellers, the Cardinals, they're not doing great. They could be sellers. Do you expect any of this tandem of Hicks, Gallegos, and Helsley to be dealt at the deadline if they're falling out of it even more?
Yes, I do. I think at least one of them is going to be traded, and I mentioned that I thought it would be. I mentioned it either last week or the week before that I think Helsley is going to be the one traded if he's healthy because he's an injury risk, and I think they can. He's always going to be an injury because when you throw 104 miles an hour, just like Jordan Hicks, you mentioned Jordan Hicks, he is an injury waiting to happen. Also, just because if he didn't change his mechanics properly, he will break down. He's not going to have this. He's not going to have 102, 103 velocity on 3 straight days. That's not going to happen. Just, it's not physically possible. So I think one of those guys will get traded. Probably it's going to end up being Gallegos just because I think the Cardinals want to hold on to the other two, but we'll see.
So I'll also mention Scott McGough for Arizona. Before the season started, we're going through the bullpens. Well, who's going to be the Mets closer? Who's going to be the Yankees closer? The Dodgers closer? Okay, that matters. They're a good team. And Arizona, why bother? We don't know who it is. They're terrible. Why bother? Well, Arizona, as we've been talking all show, is pretty good. McGough, 4 saves, saving 3 games in the last 10 days. On the year, 46 strikeouts and 39 innings for a 31% strikeout rate, and that is supported by a 15% swing strike rate. His career 55% ground ball rate this year, a .79 whip. He's good, and the Arizona Diamondbacks are good. So I think that if he's available in your league, it's time to pick him up, or at least it was time to pick him up. And the other guy I'll mention is if you're feeling lucky. And you watch a lot of TikTok. Joey Votto. Joey Votto, he's back. Already hit a homer. Those TikToks are fantastic. I mean, this guy is good. Do you feel like having Joey Votto on your roster? I don't know.
I'm not sure because I'm not sure about the playing time. Because remember, he's coming off of a shoulder surgery and an injury. I don't know how many days he's going to play during the course of the week. They may have him DH every once in a while. They're going to try to have him fit because right now what they have going there in Cincinnati is a good thing. They don't want to try to gum it up by forcing Joey Votto to play every day, even because he is on the older side. And right now they got an infusion of young talent there, and I think they want him to play because he is the face to the franchise, but to pick him up, it's if it's a DFS you want to do that's an idea, but for a weekly thing, I don't know how many games a week he's actually going to play.
Yeah, agree. I'm just throwing it out there because I think Joey Votto is a phenomenal player and belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I think he'll even get there.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah, pitcher preview, Ruvain. Who do you think is the player that you like to pick up for this coming week?
Well, I don't love any of the 2-star pitchers that are out there that are not owned by many people because I just don't want to take that risk. So I found 2 single-start pitchers for this week. The first one is on the Yankees, Clark Schmidt. He's playing Oakland at Oakland. How can you not start him? His last couple of starts, he has a 3.38 ERA, only 8 strikeouts. But he is playing Oakland. If you want a chance for a win, he's a guy. He's only 32% owned on CBS. He's a guy you can gobble up, and hopefully you get a win out of that. Another guy who's been pitching pretty well, and this is on the Braves, Jared Schuster. I know we mentioned him before. He's only 39% owned in CBS. He's playing versus Miami. His last 3 starts, 3-0, 3.38 ERA in 16 innings, and he doesn't also get you a lot of strikeouts. But again, he's playing for a good team. And listen, Miami is doing well this year also. They're almost, I think they're 10 games over 500 at the taping now. So they are a good team also, but the Braves are just that much better.
Yeah, so I'll go to the Yankee well. Johnny Brito, he's back to start at Oakland, at St. Louis. At Oakland sounds good, and St. Louis has not been amazing, so might be worth it, especially if you need a chance at wins in your points league. Go for it. Brian Bello, shallow leagues we're talking here. He's got a 3.5 ERA. He's playing against Miami, and next week he's 2-start against Texas and Oakland. So it's a good upcoming schedule. If he is available in your league, probably a good idea to snag him up. And Wade Miley, he was really doing great before he got injured, and he's back now. He looked good so far. He's playing against the Mets at New York, which is a good park. And then he's 2-start against the Cubs and Cincinnati. I think that's decent. So, especially in the points leagues, I got him in Tout Wars head-to-head points. So, Wade Miley, he is my guy.
And that's a good thing you mentioned. You mentioned they may be 1 start this week, but 2 starts possibly the following week. Same goes for the 2 guys that I mentioned. They're both possible 2-start next week. So you may get a 1 good start now, then you'll have the option of maybe having a 2-star pitcher the following week.
Yeah, we were talking before the show about the balance between holding your ratios and going for quantity. And, in some leagues, you might be you might have some points to give up in the ratio stats, but the counting stats, the strikeouts, the wins are so tight in Roto that it might be worth the trade-off. This year it's been a little bit different because, the wins are less. You can't look for the volume on the waiver wire as you have in the past. I mean, pitchers are not going 5 innings. They're not going deep. They're not going 6, and they're not even going 5 innings. The waiver wire is really barren unless you're in a shallow league. In a shallow league, you can still go for volume. But if you're in a 15, maybe even a 12 even, it's getting harder and harder to play off the waiver wire. So I don't know. What's your take on it this year? I think that I would hold ratios a little bit longer unless it's so obvious that the trade-off is you need it.
Well, it really depends on how you're doing in your league. I mean, if you have a bunch of points to gain and wins, like it's a very tight and bunched up together, then it may be worth it to spend that extra fab now to get that 2-star pitcher or the 1-star pitcher this week, 2-star pitcher next week, because you may not care too much about the ERA and WHIP, because ERA and WHIP can be made up over the course of a couple of weeks. You still can do that, because if you have a bunch of relievers on your roster or you have guys who can stabilize your ERA, then you can go after one of those types of guys. If you don't have one of those and your ERA is shot and your WHIP is shot, then there's no reason why you can't go over after them. But if you're trying to maintain your ERA and WHIP, you can turn those two categories around over the course of a couple weeks. You can't do it much later in the season, but you still have 2 months, 3 months to be able to turn that around. So even if you pick up a guy who bombs but still gets you the win, it may still be worth it.
All right, Ruvain, let's end off with the injury update. Been a couple of weeks, so I'm sure you've got a bunch of injuries as it's been another injury-filled season.
Yes, I do. We'll start with Aaron Judge, he's on the IL with a sprained right big toe. Aaron Boone said this week that Judge, quote-unquote, experienced a little bit of a breakthrough after a second PRP injection. He believes that, quote, Judge is starting to turn a corner in his recovery, but he wouldn't give a date on when he's coming back. So he has not yet been cleared for baseball activities. He's just begun pull and strengthening for pull work and strengthening for his foot. So that's a first step in the right direction. But again, there's no timeline for he's going to come back. So he wouldn't. And Aaron Boone actually got angry when the reporters tried to press him on that. So there is no timeline for his return yet. Brian Reynolds was just placed on the IL earlier today, actually, with lower back inflammation. The Pirates actually originally thought they would not have to place him on the IL, but they did anyway. Jose Palacios is a guy who can take up some playing time. Also, Henry Davis, the catching prospect, is actually his first start in the majors wasn't a catcher, but it was in right field, and he had a nice hard double his first at bat, which I saw. Very good prospect. If those two guys are available, I think those are guys you can actually get some good playing time out of. Jazz Chisholm is on the IL with turf toe. He is on a rehab assignment and could return this weekend or the beginning of next. But even after he returns, he will still have to undergo surgery at the end of the season to fix the issue, which means that for the rest of the season, he's going to have to manage whatever he has, his injury, the turf toe, and get through the rest of the season. Does that mean less playing time? Probably. Does that mean more time maybe at DH or less stolen bases? That's a possibility also. Mike Clevenger was placed on the IL with right biceps inflammation soreness. White Sox general manager Rick Hahn said this week that he's hopeful that Clevenger will be ready to resume throwing by the end of this week, but there is no timeline for his return. Tanner Houck was hit in the face by a comebacker. He will undergo surgery to repair a facial fracture. The procedure will involve the insertion of a plate in his right cheek where he got struck. There's no timetable for his return, but he hopefully is expected to return later this year.
All right. Well, that's it for the show. I want to thank, once again, Cody Decker for coming on the show. Fantastic appearance here, and thank you so much. Ruvain, how about you? What's going on with you these days?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out all these injury updates, as well as who's coming up next, what's the story with them. I also have a weekly article on Rotoballer that comes out every weekend to help you with your fab needs, so you know when the player is going to be out, when they're coming back, and who to replace.
All right, I'm Ariel Cohen. You can see my work over at Fangraphs, over at Rotoballer. I'm on Twitter at ATCNY, and of course, you can listen to me right here on the Beat the Shift podcast, presented by Fangraphs. All right, we're going to be back at it next week. And, sorry again for last week, but, hey, those softball wins were just
Life happens. Life happens.
Yeah. It was, we usually don't make up games the very next day. But, the playoffs were really scheduled for this week, and, everybody was free, and the evening looked good, and my team was like, yeah, we could all make it, and I was just got to do that, So thanks for putting up with that, and thanks for tuning into the show once again. All right, so again, thank you to Cody Decker for being our guest today, and from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.